Which quarterbacks and tight ends should you have in your lineup and who should be on the bench? We're about to tell you. Welcome back, Endgame community. I'm Pierre, he's Chris, and we're here to break down every matchup to talk about the quarterbacks and tight ends that you need to know about in Week 10, who to start and who to sit. Don't forget that there are 4 teams on bye this week. That would be the Bengals, the Ravens, the Patriots, and the Jets. Now, there are a couple of guys you don't need to sweat. These are must-starts regardless of matchup. At quarterback, Josh Allen, Pat Mahomes, Jalen Hurts. At tight end, Travis Kelce, Dallas Goedert, and George Kittle. All right, let's begin with the Thursday night matchup. It is the Falcons taking on the Panthers. The Falcons, it's still Marcus Mariota at the helm, and we still probably feel the same way about him, don't we?
Yeah, one of those guys, you can start him in a 2QB super flex, can always do something, can always use his legs. Don't love it, but 2QB super flex only.
I mean, based on the matchup, because again, he put up some decent numbers against Carolina the last time, and he can always run in a touchdown, but he'll never be a guy you really want to start in a single quarterback league. You can stream him if you need to, but that's about it. And there's Kyle Pitts. Oh, Kyle Pitts. Is the panic level high enough that we're just benching Kyle Pitts, or can he still be started?
No, I can't bench Kyle Pitts. He can still be started. Like we talk about some of these streaming tight ends later on, I'm starting Kyle Pitts over all those guys. Look, as long as Mariota's a quarterback, there's going to be a lot of like meat left on the bone, a lot of, fantasy points left on the field, but I think you got to start Kyle Pitts in most cases.
Yeah, anybody who has Kyle Pitts anywhere just was kicking themselves or wanting to kick the TV, seeing that almost touchdown that Mariota overthrew. Kyle Pitts led all tight ends by far, I think doubled the next closest in air yards last week, and it meant nothing because he only had like 2 catches for 27 yards. Just did nothing again, but you could still start him. I mean, I really think there's not many tight ends who have his upside, so yeah, I think you can still start him. Seahawks taking on the Bucs. Geno Smith against Tampa Bay on the road. How are you feeling?
I mean, it's a tough matchup. Geno was not bad last week for fantasy. Did run for like a bunch of yards, but man, in this matchup, I'm not going to say you have to sit him because he has been good. But man, I'm only going to start him in a 1 QB league if I have to.
Yeah, I can't feel great about this particular matchup. Tampa Bay, if nothing else, does still have a pretty good defense. So to me, he's best left for only a super flex league. And now all of a sudden, Noah Fant is alive. I mean, a big game. Do you think that this happens again?
No, I mean, what did he have? Like a 51-yard catch that was thrown 3 yards behind the line of scrimmage, and he ran 55 yards to go 51 yards. So I don't expect that against the Bucs. I'm not playing Noah Fant, no.
Yeah, I feel almost like it's a trap. I mean, I want to see it again, right, more than once. It could just as easily be like Will Dissly does something or nobody. So, no, I mean, you'd have to be pretty desperate to get Fant in your lineup. And then there's Tom Brady. I mean, that's nice. He helped get the win at the last minute, got the milestones. But for fantasy, is he doing anything for you?
It's probably 300 yards and a touchdown or 290 yards and a touchdown or something like that. Like it just seems like every week that's what he gives you. So not the worst option, but more like a 2QB super flex play.
Seahawks have been kind of overachieving on defense. They have a lot of rookies. I feel like a guy like Brady might take advantage of it. I'm not going to say he has a big game, but I feel like you can at least start Brady this week in even a single quarterback league. And then Cade Otton had a nice game this past week, actually scored a touchdown. How do you feel about him?
I mean, he's a guy that if you need him, you can stream him. We know like he at least has a chance to score a touchdown maybe if they get close. So not a must start, but if you need him, you can stream him.
I feel like he's a pretty good start here. Maybe even talking top 10 tight end this week because Seahawks have been pretty generous to tight ends. And obviously he's getting those targets. So again, I'm not going to go crazy, but I kind of like Otton this week. Vikings at Bills. Let's talk about Kirk Cousins, who's coming off another win somehow. Do you think you can pull it off against the Bills and do anything for your fantasy team?
Yeah, not liking Kirk Cousins this week against the Bills. I mean, maybe they win the game, but probably not. And even still, not expecting a huge game from Kirk Cousins. 2 QB Superflex only.
Bills coming off a very bitter, disappointing loss. Vikings riding high on a win. This feels like the perfect letdown time. I'm going to go ahead and avoid Kirk Cousins this week. I feel like this could be almost a meltdown situation. And what about TJ Hawkinson? First game in the Vikings, put up big numbers. Does this mean that Hawkinson is all of a sudden a stud tight end?
I'm not going to go so far as to say he's a stud tight end, but he's involved enough to be startable. So I think if you got Hawkinson, you put him in your lineup.
Yeah, again, how many tight ends you feel that good about? But look, his target share was very promising. Instead of adding a receiver, they added a tight end. Maybe that's what they needed. So gotta like Hawkinson, and they're gonna have to pass the ball quite a bit, I think. So I feel Hawkinson is a must start. And then Dawson Knox, never really a must start, but do you feel okay about him in this matchup?
No, the same way I always feel about Dawson Knox. He's one of these, streaming tight ends that have to score a touchdown. So if you're desperate, he can always score, but that's about it.
Touchdown or bust, same as usual. So exactly, stream if you need, otherwise pass. Lions at the Bears. Let's start with Jared Goff because we must. Can Jared Goff do anything against Chicago in Chicago?
I mean, maybe. It's not a terrible matchup. It's, I never get excited to starting Jared Goff. Nothing more than a desperate 2QB superflex in a good matchup.
Yeah, I think it's pretty clear now that you should not be streaming him in a single quarterback league. Look, the fact that they traded Hawkinson, and that makes it even more clear. They're just going to try to win with a run game. So, yeah, Goff, just not enough of a ceiling. I'll pass unless it's a deep 2-quarterback league. What about Justin Fields? I mean, we don't want to get ahead of ourselves here, but he is the QB1 over the past 3 weeks, and we saw what he did last week. So how far are you going to go with Fields in terms of ranking him this week?
Probably pretty high. I mean, against the Lions, if you grabbed Justin Fields off waivers last week because you needed him for a bye-week replacement, you're feeling good, you start Justin Fields.
You can't not start Justin Fields if you have him unless you, for some reason, picked him up when you already have Josh Allen or Pat Mahomes. But you've got to. Against Detroit, look, maybe we're all due for this massive letdown because we expect him to score 50 points, but you have to at least take the chance. He is a no doubt must start if you have him. And then Cole Kmet, I mean, it's the Lions. The Lions give up more yards per target to tight ends than anybody, and of course, they're still a bad defense. You have to start Cole Kmet too.
Yeah, I think I'm not going to go as far as to say you have to start him, but I think as far as streaming options go this week, he's one of the best streaming options.
Definitely. And you look, again, how many tight ends you feel better about these days? So I really like Kmet. I feel like he's a strong start if you don't already have a stud tight end. In the Jaguars-Chiefs matchup, you got two no-doubters on one side, and then you got the Jaguars. So Trevor Lawrence, a little lackluster against the Raiders, but that's because Travis Etienne is just doing all the heavy lifting. Do you think Lawrence puts up numbers against the Chiefs?
I mean, maybe. I could see a game script where they have to throw it a bunch, but I could also see a game script where Etienne just goes wild because this Chiefs run defense isn't really that good. So Trevor Lawrence, a guy, like a good start in the 2QB Superflex League, but that's about it.
Lawrence really hasn't done anything this year to excite me. I feel like this could be a tough game for him because they know that he'll have to pass it, and I'm just not feeling good. So I'm going to sit Trevor Lawrence, even in Superflex leagues. And then Evan Ingram did leave last week with a back injury. Too early to say for sure if he's going to be ruled out. If he does come back and play, can you put him back in your lineup?
I mean, if we hear he's 100%, no limitations, the back is fine, then sure, you can start him. Because prior to last week, he'd been good for a while, and it's not a tough matchup. So, but only if we hear he's 100% good to go. If he's limited, then no, I'm not starting him.
I'm going to agree, yeah. I mean, if he's good, he's been solid, he's okay. But, if he got that questionable tag going into the game, I'm just going to go ahead and pass. Browns at Dolphins. Let's go ahead and do our customary Jacoby Brissett pass. Starter pass.
I'm going to say this week, not in the 1QB league, but because of the matchup, if you need him in a 2QB Superflex, I think he's startable.
All right. See, I was not expecting that. Maybe. I mean, let's not forget he was the backup in Miami last week. Maybe there's a revenge game narrative here. So, but no, I'm not going to start Jacoby Brissett. I mean, sorry, not enough upside for me. And then we don't think David Njoku is going to be 100%. If he does suit up, do you take a chance with him?
I think you have to. In this matchup, with how good he's been, I mean, how many tight ends are you going to feel better about than David Njoku? So if he somehow plays, I think you got to roll with him and hope for the best.
I mean, you'd think, for a team with a losing record, they wouldn't put him out there if he wasn't good to go. But yeah, I agree. If Njoku plays, you play him. Don't forget also going back to the field where he played his college ball, so he's familiar with that stadium. And then you got Tua, who, I mean, why don't we have him as a must start yet? All right, but go ahead. How do you feel about Tua?
I mean, you got to feel good about him this week against the Browns. If you got Tua, you're starting Tua.
And I am definitely starting Tua. Look, the Browns' pass defense, nothing to be scared about. And then Mike Gesicki, hope for him?
No, another guy that's just touchdown or bust. I mean, if you're desperate, sure, but just has to score a touchdown.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty obvious that as long as those two receivers are out there running around, they don't need Gesicki to do much, so I will pass. Texans at the Giants. This should be a battle of the running backs, but they're also quarterbacks on the field here. Let's talk about Davis Mills. Does he do anything for you this week?
No, definite must sit going up against the Giants. It's a good secondary. There's no world where I'm starting Davis Mills this week.
Yeah, I'm not in any of those worlds either. Definitely not starting Davis Mills anywhere. Daniel Jones, you got to feel a little better about because it's the Texans, but it would have to be a 2-quarterback league.
Yeah, and even then you're hoping, for running, like he runs in a touchdown, because they're probably not going to have to throw the ball much because the Texans are just so bad on the ground, so only in a 2QB Superflex league.
But that's the thing with Jones. I mean, any value he has isn't as a passer anyways, it's as a runner. So I could see him getting some rushing yards, but again, only where you need a second quarterback. All right, let's talk Saints, Steelers. Andy Dalton still in there for the Saints. Is he in there for fantasy anywhere?
I mean, even in a good matchup, he just has so little upside. Maybe in a deep 2QB Superflex league, but even then I don't feel great about it. So I'm just going to say no to Andy Dalton.
Yeah, he's proven to be, with the exception of one game, exactly one game, he's been just very mid, as they say. So I will say, look, for Superflex purposes, I like him better than guys like Mills and Brissett and Trevor Lawrence even this week, but that's only because I don't like those other guys. And then we always have to talk about Taysom Hill. Taysom Hill do anything this week?
Maybe. One of these guys, he'll get some carries. He has a chance to score, but outside of that, not going to do anything. I mean, I definitely like him better than some of these other streaming options we talked about, like Noah Fant. So, if you need him, you can start him.
Always the same. You don't have a solid option, just roll with Hill and roll the dice. It is a good matchup at least. And then Kenny Pickett. Do you think the week off does him any good? Prepare for this game? We see any improvement?
I mean, I don't know. Maybe the Steelers spent the whole week off studying, but other than that, probably not. I'm not starting Kenny Pickett.
For his sake, you better hope they were studying a lot, but it doesn't matter to me. There's no chance I'm starting Kenny Pickett anywhere. Pat Freiermuth, on the other hand, somehow has been really good despite Kenny Pickett not being good. So how good do you feel about the Fryer Goat?
I feel very good about Freiermuth. Chase Claypool gone. It's a good matchup. He's getting a ton of targets. Start Pat Freiermuth.
Agree. Pretty much a must start. And you know what? A pass catching tight end is a young quarterback's best friend. So got to keep rolling with the move. Denver's going to go to Tennessee to take on the Titans. We got Russ Wilson back in action. How do you feel about him?
I feel probably better than a lot of people do. He looked fairly good before the bye. It's a good matchup. I'm not going to say he's a guy you have to start in a 1QB league, but in a 2QB Superflex league, I definitely like Russell Wilson.
I think it's fair to say this Tennessee defense is pretty much a funnel defense. Really tough against the run, really not against the pass. We saw they just got eviscerated by Pat Mahomes. Russell Wilson has some upside, so I feel like he's a solid start, and you could even go with him in a single QB league if you need to replace like Lamar Jackson or Joe Burrow. Greg Dulcich, guy who's really coming on before the bye. Do you think he keeps it going?
Yeah, why not? It's a good matchup. Talked about I like Russ this week. I think you start Dulcich if you picked him up.
Very solid start, especially in full PPR leagues. Yeah, I like Dulcich. I like his floor. I'm probably going to have him as a top 10 tight end this week. Now for Tennessee, will we see Ryan Tannehill return? And do you trust him enough to use him in fantasy?
No, even if he's back, it's still a tough defense. I'm not starting Ryan Tannehill.
I mean, he wasn't that interesting even before the injury. I don't see why anything would be different. There's no receiver help here. There's no passing volume. No to Tannehill. And I think it's pretty clear to say we don't want to start Malik Willis even if he gets another shot.
Definitely not starting Malik Willis, no.
The Colts going to take on the Raiders. I mean, let's just assume it's Sam Ehlinger again, this time with a different head coach. Man, it's hard to watch, isn't it?
Yeah, and look, this is about as good of a matchup can get for a quarterback, and there's no way in any format I'm starting Sam Ehlinger. No, definite must sit.
A guy who somehow managed to get negative points for some fantasy teams last week. Yeah, that's a hard no for me. Derek Carr, I mean, look, he'll have a good first half. Just don't count anything in the second half. Do you think he does anything against Indy here?
Nope, still not starting Derek Carr. I'm not going to recommend you start Derek Carr. I'm sitting Derek Carr.
And the problem is that you don't have to worry about them having to come from behind or put up points against Indy because Indy's not going to score. So, yeah, Derek Carr is really only a two-quarterback option. Darren Waller missed last week. Maybe he comes back. Maybe it doesn't matter, does it?
No, I'm not starting Darren Waller. Coming back from injury, Devontae Adams gets all the targets. Not starting Darren Waller.
No, I mean, he really has not really done anything this year. Even when he has been healthy, Waller should be benched. Really, he should be traded if you have him still. Cowboys taking on the Packers. Okay, so a week off. Maybe Dak Prescott looks even better against this Packers defense, though. I don't know. You think on the road, Green Bay, Lambeau Field, you think there's a letdown in store?
I mean, there's a possibility of a letdown, but it's still Dak Prescott. I mean, look at the quarterbacks we're talking about. I think if you have Prescott, you got to start him. Might not be his best game, but you got to start him.
Yeah, I'll probably have him on the lower end of the QB1 range here, but just talk about the lack of really standout quarterbacks. A couple players on bye this week. Yeah, you're probably starting Dak if you have him. And then Dalton Schultz, I mean, how dependable is he going to be the rest of the season? Is he a guy who's going to just become a must-start pretty soon?
Yeah, I definitely think Dalton Schultz, another guy, kind of like Pat Freiermuth, getting the target share, getting the opportunity. If you've got him, you start him.
Yeah, I like Schultz. I think he's solid. Definitely going to start Schultz if I have him. Aaron Rodgers, I'll let you take this one on.
No, not starting him in any format. Tough matchup, sitting Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, no bounce back game. Yeah, no. I mean, come on. What role? I think you were saying that maybe at this point he'll just walk away and retire mid-season. And Robert Tonyan, probably the same thing.
Yeah, no interest in Robert Tonyan. I'm sitting him.
Not at all. Cardinals taking on the Rams. Desperation time for both teams. What do you expect out of Kyler Murray? Is he still a guy you just have to roll with?
I think so. I mean, he's still running the ball. Still putting up decent fantasy points week in and week out. It's like you go like, man, Kyler Murray was terrible, and then he gets like 19, 20 fantasy points. You're like, oh, okay. So yeah, I think you got to start Kyler Murray.
He's always going to be one of those guys that's better in fantasy than in reality. With the rushing upside plus the garbage time, if that even is a thing this week, he's still a guy you kind of just have to keep in there. And Zach Ertz, not as great lately, but he's still a guy that you should keep in your lineup.
I think so. Had a nice bounce back game last week. Got a lot of targets, scored a touchdown. Maybe he's mad at DeAndre Hopkins. Who knows? But I think you got to start Zach Ertz.
Yeah, you still have to feel pretty good about Ertz. I'm keeping him in my lineups wherever I have him. Matt Stafford, can't do it, can you?
2 QB Superflex only, and that's only because this defense is so bad, but still not expecting a huge game from Stafford. So 2 QB Superflex only.
Rough year. Again, you'd have to really have nobody better, and only in a Superflex option would I put Stafford in there. And then Tyler Higbee, talk about falling off completely. I mean, is Higbee startable?
No, and this is like one of the best matchups for tight ends too. They're just terrible against the tight end, but he's not even getting targets anymore. So, man, even in a great matchup like this, I don't think I can start Tyler Higbee.
No, look, these young guys we've mentioned, Kmet, Otten, I'd rather put those guys in over Higbee these days, so probably going to have him on the bench. Chargers taking on the 49ers, Justin Herbert. Well, look, he was fine against the Falcons. Now he goes on the road against the 49ers. Still no Mike Williams. probably no Keenan Allen. Where does he fall?
Man, I mean, it's hard to bench Justin Herbert, especially, with the quarterback landscape, but just barely startable for me this week in a 1 QB league. Just barely startable.
Well, here's the thing. You guys probably noticed he's not in our must start at the top of the episode anymore, but if you have Justin Herbert, you probably don't have a better quarterback. So unless you happen to go pick up Justin Fields or someone like that, you're probably still starting Justin Herbert. Gerald Everett, though, I think he is still startable because, well, those top 2 receivers are still out.
Yeah, you got to keep rolling with Everett. It feels like, it's like when he should go off, he doesn't, and then when he shouldn't go off, he does. But there's just not a lot of targets here for nobody's healthy, so you got to start Gerald Everett.
And then on the other side, good old Jimmy G going against the Chargers. I'm guessing just kind of a mid-range QB2 as usual.
Yeah, because this shouldn't be a game where he has to throw it a lot. I could see Christian McCaffrey getting a ton of carries. Not really a game where he's going to have to throw it much. So 2 QB super flex only.
Agree. Always kind of right there. And look, Chargers much worse against the run. And so it's probably going to be a McCaffrey day. So Jimmy G only in those formats. And then finally we have the Commanders at the Eagles. Obviously, you're still rolling with Jalen Hurts, who might not be the MVP favorite. Are you rolling with Taylor Heineke anywhere?
No chance. No way. Against this Eagles defense, not even in the 2 QB Superflex. No, not starting Heineke.
This could turn out really badly for him and the Commanders. I mean, we'll see. Maybe they keep it close, but you're not going to risk your fancy fortunes on Taylor Heineke. No way. All right, that's our take on the quarterbacks and tight ends for Week 10 that you should or should not be playing. We have you covered as far as running back, wide receivers, everything you need to know. Check out our Week 10 playlist and all the advice you need to win in fantasy football.